Hey guys, it's Dave coming to you from the Hobo Dojo, and we are here on what today's date is. It's the 27th of February already. Ay, this year's already well underway. So the Cohen hearings are going on, and I'm not listening right now. I did a little bit earlier, and I'm going to go back to listening to some more of it. But I mean, it's pretty depressing, this sort of thing. Um, I have to remind myself all the time that what do lawyers do for a living? Lawyers try to make a case for their own interests, for the interests, which usually the interests of their clients, and they do it regardless of what the facts are. They do it in opposition to the facts as often as they do it using the facts. Um, and so that's what they do. I mean, lawyers it's not the business of telling the truth, it's the business of gaining some sort of advantage over your opponent in court or in a hearing, whatever. But this whole so I don't know anything about the veracity of what Cohen's saying in terms of why he's trashing Trump and things like that, but you know why that the hearing is going on. The hearing is going on so that they can get Cohen to trash Donald Trump. That's the whole point of this. And I'm really, really ashamed of us as a country that we stand by and do this and kind of let it go by. It reminds me of when I was a kid, we had narcs. We were always looking out for narcs, and they would be people that would be just low-level drug users. And the situation was, because we grew up, weed could get you thrown in jail, and there was all kinds of different pills and things, whites and reds, which were second all whites were amphetamines. That was just part of the culture when I was growing up, and everybody used a little something when we were in high school. But you were always watching out for narcs, and the idea of a narc was a person who got busted, and they were low level, and so what the drug enforcement people tried to get them to do was turn in somebody bigger. That was the deal. You're going to find somebody, you're going to turn in somebody bigger than you. And that's how you go up the line. So they'll reduce your sentence, or give you a suspended sentence or whatever, if you will tell them where you got the stuff. So it was always this idea that, oh geez, I'm going to get narked out on something. This is narc America now. They just assume a crime by looking at somebody that they want to be the perpetrator of a crime. There's no evidence that Donald Trump created any crimes or committed any crimes, and so but they lost an election to him, and they want the guy to be guilty of something. So they're just going through everybody who's ever had any dealings with him at all, starting with people who have some chance of being shady, a lawyer. Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, people who are kind of in the business of fixing and manipulating things. These people have something wrong. You can find something that you can jail these people for, and but you could have before Donald Trump was elected as well. And so it's a question of you find some people, you put the squeeze on them, and you try to find people who are not so upstanding in the first place, like a lawyer or a political fixer or something like that, and people who are very used to playing fast and loose with the truth and doing whatever it takes to get an advantage over the opposition. And then they lean on these people really, really hard, and then they let them know that, hey, we'll have some hearings, and if you are rough enough on your former boss, well, then we'll keep that in mind. And to think that we are paying for a supposedly independent counsel who is still following up this Russian collusion thing when it's completely made up out of whole cloth. And then they're using this sort of technique, this sort of narc technique. Let's grab whoever and squeeze them until they, knowing that they're low-level people and they don't want to go to jail, or knowing that they're lower-level people, will give up somebody higher up. This is the idea. and it makes me sick. It has nothing to do with justice. Justice is a crime happens, and then you investigate to find out who the criminal was. It's not you grab somebody that you would like to prove that they are a criminal, and then you start constructing a case. This is just all wrong, and I'm really pissed off about it. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is over in Vietnam. He's over there now, I think, meeting up with Kim Jong-un again, and I'm really happy to see that. I know that there's no really good reason why Kim Jong-un won't come into the modern world. I mean, he told us that when he told us he loved Dennis Rodman. When he started having Dennis Rodman coming over, what he was saying to us is, I like American culture. You know, here I have inherited a police state, but I like basketball. I like American basketball. Donald Trump is a simple man. He understands simple signals. You know, by simple I mean not simplistic, not simple-minded. I mean that he's used to dealing with looking at things and seeing what's there. You don't look at it and then ignore everything that's right on the surface like the Democrats like to do. They like to look at anything and see everything except what's right staring them in the face. You know, guy's not a guy anymore. No, you know, woman's not a woman anymore. Nothing is as it seems because they are collectively involved in changing everything, in rearranging reality, as my friend Emmett Grayson McCarthy says. Reality is bigotry. And so they're always looking for something to be other than it appears. But Donald Trump just looks at it and goes, oh, the guy, you know, this guy didn't create that situation over there. He inherited it. And I think Donald Trump understands a little bit about inheriting an existing legacy and how that can possibly be changed. Like he changed his own existing legacy. He went from inheriting a business which built homes for you know, working class people, and he turned it into a business that, you know, creates high end things, structures and buildings, and or licenses the name. So he reshaped that. I think he perfectly understands how a son could reshape his father's business. And I think that Kim Jong-un probably looks at Donald Trump and says, this guy probably understands what it's like to inherit something and want to change it into something else. And Donald Trump is, as I said in my video, world peace Donald Trump style, which I still stand by. A lot of leftists have commented on that video very angrily, you know, because the basic idea is Donald Trump's not ideological. This is why he could actually create world peace, is because the problem is we keep sending ideologues into the world, telling people in all the trouble spots, if you'll just adopt our ideology, if you'll just stop being whatever it is that you are and adopt American ideals, well, then we'll get along fine. Or at least that's the message they seem to get. Donald Trump doesn't have a history of ideology. He has a history of commerce. He has a history of abundance. What's the word I'm looking for? Prosperity. He's the international symbol of prosperity, whether you like what he is or not. I mean, I'm not a real big guy for gold-plated everything, but we would be blind to the idea that everywhere in the world, people have thought of Donald Trump as the symbol of prosperity forever. You know, I can't think of anybody who's more symbolic of anything else. I mean, like Beyonce is the symbol of sassy R&B singers. You know, there's nobody that's more symbolic of any one thing than Donald Trump is of prosperity. That's his message, and that's what he's... And speaking of that, the new numbers are out on jobs, and the new numbers are out on wages, and you know we're still at well below 4% unemployed, lowest numbers in decades, and the average wage is $17.30 an hour. This is really not, as you know, AOC says, most Americans don't get a living wage. What are you talking about? Most Americans get well above a living wage. What is it, 2% that is even into that sort of minimum wage zone where they're worried about living wage, increasing it to a living wage? Most people get well above a living wage. I mean, go stand near a freeway sometime. Just as it's a great way to take a poll of the economy. Just go by any freeway, stand on a hill nearby, look down to the freeway, and see how many cars you see going by that are more than 20 years old. You know, go to Cuba and do that. You know, you won't see any cars less than 20 years old. Don't go to my driveway. That's not a good judge of the economy. But just as a snapshot, just look at the freeways. Everyone's going someplace, and they're all driving an almost brand new car. We're doing all right here. There's nothing to panic about and become, you know, neo-socialists about. You're going to want to check out a video that Jason is doing. He's probably going to do it tomorrow or something. Like, he's so busy. Jason is super busy because, you know, they got the new baby, and he's working his full-time job and still trying to live up to his situation with BCL. And but in the next, hopefully tomorrow or the next day, he's got a new video coming out. So I don't want to poach on his thing. He wants to talk about some of that stuff, the you know, the new socialism. I wanted to talk to you about one of my videos that came out yesterday and really just kind of tanked. And I think I know why. It's the fourth of 4 parts. You know how I am with, I'm always trying to put out these series. I don't know, it's something in me where I want to do something in longer form. You know, I don't want to just say, okay, here's all I've got to say about something in one piece. I would rather do it in smaller chunks. But what I've learned slowly and gradually and painfully is that there's only so much you can tell about one topic before people tune it out. And the video that I released yesterday is called Motown versus Martin Luther King. And I won't tell you what it's all about. I thought that was a really catchy angle, and it came out of some thinking I did after visiting the Motown studios in Detroit on my trip a year and a half ago. And I had written the piece, and then we had recorded it once, but already we were at that place where we weren't on YouTube yet in any sort of meaningful way. We were still on Facebook. And Facebook was crushing us. What had happened is I had released my He Too video, which is starting to do pretty well on our YouTube channel now. And we had an organized protest movement against us by a lot of feminists, where they have these pages on Facebook which are organized harassment pages, and so they'll write a little thing in there which is really a link to a page, and it looks like a sentence. It's easy to miss. And because it doesn't look like like they're hashtagging or something like that. And what it does is it calls people from these organized harassment sites, and they descend on the page and turn the whole thing into a verbal war. And meanwhile, what they do is they also report you. And so that's how our channel, as far as I can tell, fell afoul of Facebook and made them destroy us, because they destroyed the channel. What they did is they changed all the algorithms. And what they had done was, we had 80,000 follows at the time. I hate the word followers, so follows is what we had, 80,000 at that time, and which is about the same as there is now, because, you know, people don't unfollow you necessarily, but it's basically a dead channel. And what they had done, when people follow at that time on Facebook, that's automatic notifications. And it's not like an email notification. It's like YouTube. There's nothing outside of the form itself. Like if you hit the notifications on our videos, all you'll do is next time you're on YouTube, there'll just be a little thing up there in the corner that says, hey, you know, Dave and Jason have a thing out. And you can ignore it if you want, but at least you can keep up with us if you'd like to. And the same thing was going on Facebook. People would get a notification. Something would come up in their, either in their little notification thing up on the corner, or it would pop up in their news feed. And so what Facebook did was they, without telling us, without explaining their actions, they basically reset all of those algorithms so that the notifications were no longer automatic. So a tiny fraction. So what it was they turned it into a highlights situation, is what they called it, where a certain number of them, in my estimation, it was something in the neighborhood of 5%, would have an opportunity to be notified. And the rest of the people would just not be told anything at all. It wouldn't show up in their newsfeed, and it wouldn't show up in their notifications in the corner of their page. So really, really unethical. It's a private business. What can you do? There's nothing I can do. I was appreciative of what Facebook giving us a platform like that, and I didn't want to make a fuss about anything, but that's what they did. And so suddenly all the people that we had, no more notifications. They just changed the whole algorithm without anybody knowing. So the settings people thought they had no longer existed. And in order to find the notification setting, you had to dig down deep. But first, you had to know that it had been changed. And of course, we couldn't tell anybody, because the only way we had to get in touch with all of our followers was to post a video, which then they weren't being notified of. And so, we were just screwed. So anyway, I had done this Motown versus Martin Luther King. It's a miracle that I got back to my train of thought on that. Trust me. But I had done that, and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to throw that out because I'm really kind of proud of that video. I'm proud of the thinking that I did for it, and what the primary insight is. And I think it's really valid. And I would love it if some of you who passed on it because you looked at it and said, "Oh, Dave, enough of Black History Month, enough." Rest assured, it is number 4 in that series, and it's the final one. I was just running out of Black History Month, and I tried to just jam all that stuff into 2 weeks' time. And the first 3 they did okay with you, but the third one was dropping off already in interest, and I could tell. And then Jason did a thing on racism, which I should have protested on that, because that overloaded the whole idea of it. There's only so much of any one topic that anybody can be interested in, myself included, except for guitars. I never, for some reason, am less interested in those. So if you would, and you haven't watched that video, please just check it out. I will link it at the end of this video, and or else you just find it on the page. Anytime you just go to our thing and just click on videos, and it'll show you all the most recent stuff just on our BCL page. Speaking of guitars, you can see a couple guitars in the picture here, and I've had a number of you have asked me what those guitars are. Those are the one closest to the camera is what is called a T-type, and all you guitar players know what this is. T stands for Telecaster, and the other one is an S-type, and that stands for Stratocaster. And these are the 2 major iconic guitars made by Fender Guitars. Now, everybody has had the patterns on these guitars for a very long time. There's been really, really good copies made of these for a really long time. And there is this one particular company that is out of New Hampshire. It's a company called Rondo Music, run by a guy named Kurt, who has a little bit of a it's interesting because people actually contact this guy and ask him stuff, and he make sure they get the guitar they want and stuff like that. Everyone always says Kurt rocks, he's great. But they sell a ton of weird and crazy looking, like shredder guitars that have sort of offset frets. They've got what they call fan frets. So because what happens is when you get a really wide neck, like you've got 8-string or 10-string shredder guitars with these big flat fingerboards, it gets a little hard to fret them. So they have them sort of fan fretted so that the frets are a little farther apart, on the upside of the neck than on the others, so that that you can run along and you can get your notes properly. I've never played one. I don't know what it is, but this company sells a bunch of those, and they sell particularly good copies of the iconic brands of guitars. Like if you were looking at, as I said, with Telecaster, the main 2 things were the Stratocaster. If you're looking at Fender, the Telecaster and the Stratocaster are the iconic guitars. And these 2 guitars over here are killer guitars. They're just really good guitars. The green one over there, the Strat, has got an issue that I think is where it's getting some kind of bad connection. I think I think I have a broken solder on my input jack or something. I've got to put it up here on the table and break it open and see where I've got a solder problem. But the other one is a tank, you know. The other, and that one's a tank too. Always been very reliable until I developed this little problem with it. But the other one, this wooden one up in the front here, the natural wood, it's an amazing guitar. It was about $200, and it is so well made. It's amazing to me how it's got a baseball bat of a neck. I love those on a Telecaster. I love the big fat necks, and it's a one-piece swamp ash body. You can't get anything, even from Fender's high-end models. You don't get a one-piece. I mean, it's not a one-piece swamp ash neck. It's a one-piece swamp ash body with a hard rock maple neck, and you do not get one-piece swamp ash bodies. It's big, thick timber, and it's really hard to get a timber that's that big and that thick of good guitar tone woods. So it's amazing to me that they're able to put this guitar out. I think they're made in Indonesia, so it's whenever you can, of course, buy American, but I can't afford right now to buy American guitars, so I will. I do have an old. I have a couple of Gibsons that were made in the United States, and of course, they're a kind of guitar as the Les Paul, and these people. Rondo Music also make a fantastic Les Paul guitar, made in South Korea, that is. So anyway, it's great. It's a great company if you're a beginner and you want to pick up a guitar that's good. I don't get any kickback from them or anything. They don't know me over there or anything like that. It's just they're really good guitars. You can't go wrong with them. If you only have a couple $100 to spend on a guitar and you're not really ready to spend $1,500 on a Fender product or a couple $1,000 on a Gibson product, but you want to have their style guitar to get used to it and see if it's going to be your choice for the long run. This is a very, very good company. Anyways, I wanted to just answer the question. Now, a couple things. So we covered that. Make sure you watch for that video of Jason's, and I don't want to spoil it, but there is something in that video that's very, very funny. And so you won't miss it. You won't wonder when you see the thing, is this the thing Dave was talking about that's funny? Because it's very, very funny. But it's also a very thoughtful piece that he's written. The question that I also want to talk about is, well, what's Biden doing? Is Joe Biden going to come into this race? My instinct is that he won't. But I'd really like to hear you guys' take on it, because I'm really, really bad at predicting races. And of course, anybody who knows me on Facebook knows that I have been saying for a long time that the Democrats are working off a thing that I call the aging radical bucket list. And that goes like this: black president, female president, then it's some sort of president of color, who gets one of the other sort of oppressed groups, Hispanic. It could be a Muslim. It could be, Muslim might be its own category down a little further down the line. But because they didn't get Hillary, but they're going by and they're checking off these things that they've always wanted to be the first to get, because they are the anti-oppression party, and as far as they know, everybody except white people in America is just oppressed and being held down. I mean, this is their narrative. So this is so it's part of their brand that they really have to get the first female in there. It's one of the reasons why I think that if Donald Trump decides he won't run, which he probably will, and I put that video out that his agenda can still win by him pulling out if he thinks that he can't win, and backing Nikki Haley, and then it would be just so delicious. You guys hated that video. And so I put it on private because I was getting abused for so much that I just sort of pulled it out. Maybe I'll stick this in later in the race. But after a couple of days of being called an idiot, I'm unsubscribing you, screw you. Because you can't even talk strategy that if if it features the possibility of Donald Trump not running. So I mean, that's, for the Trump super Trumpers. But I think that's one of the things that would be so delicious about a Nikki Haley presidency, is that she is a woman of color. And if we could put in the first woman of color, that would just be awesome. That would be so awesome. That there would I would need a much larger cup than this to hold my progressive tears. It'd be tanks and tanks you'd need. But the reason I bring that up is my instinct is they are going to really bear down on woman of color. And because they have to compress, it will be okay to have of color, which could be a male Hispanic, it could be a female Hispanic, wouldn't matter, but that'd be after first white president. And I think the plan was you start with black male president, okay, because we've always had males, we've never had a female, and so you go with black male, and then you move it on over to female, but don't go so far that it freaks people out. Go with white female. That was going to be Hillary Clinton. That's why they shoved her back behind Barack Obama, destroyed her candidacy before Barack Obama, and then stuck her into then got her into a position of power there, where she sat there through most of the Obama administration, and then pulled out in time to get her breath, and then they ran her for president, and they kneecapped Bernie. They gave him the Jeff Gillooly figure skating treatment, and Nancy Kerrigan him to hell and back. And so Bernie is still a factor in that he's the kind of the king of the Neo-Socialists. He's pretty old, though. He would be 77 years old at the time of the election, I believe. Or he's 77 now. So he would be 79. I don't know off the top of my head how old Joe Biden is, but he's pretty old too. So my feeling is that because they missed out on Hillary Clinton being the president, and getting a good clean win for first female president, now they have to take of color and compress it with female, because they themselves are old. These are the people that I'm pretty old, and I'm young for a baby boomer. And these aging radicals I'm talking about are baby boomers that are 10 years older than I am. They might not live through the next presidency. So they need to compress female with of color and go with female of color, woman of color. And this is where you get your Kamala Harris. And she's been running for president all along. And that she just says what they tell her to say. She doesn't have any particular thing, much like Barack Obama was absolutely, I'm not going to say he was programmed by them. He was self-programmed. He had been through college, and he'd understood what everybody says, and he learned how, he said, if I say certain things, I get invited to all the best parties. Suddenly I'm running the Harvard Law Review, and I never even had to write a paper for it. Suddenly I'm just getting fast-tracked. The more very predictable liberal things that I say that will please the plantation masters, the further I'll go. He knew. So he performed very, very well as first black president, who's, of course, at least as much white male as he is black male. Anyway, so that's my very strong instinct, is they will not budge off that, and they will have to kneecap Joe Biden if it should show that he's doing very well in the polls, like Bernie was doing. They'll have to do some kind of a thing to him to knock him out. And Biden is a lot of things I don't care for, but he's a fairly wily old political animal. He's been doing this a very long time, and he knows this better than anybody else. So I asked the question of this on Facebook in the last couple of days: in what situation could Biden win? And the comment that I got that kind of turned a light on for me was Biden could win like if he runs like a liberal instead of running like a radical neo-socialist. If he divorces himself from that thing and says, look, I'm not of the AOC variety. I'm not a Bernie bro. I'm old lunchbox Joe. I think it's great that we're getting some jobs. Good for President Trump. Now let's just take things back and slightly back in more of a liberal direction, so we can make sure that that everybody's doing well, and we'll get the unions going again, and it'll be all great. Go old school like that. And I think if he does that, this whoever it was that commented on my thread that said that, I thought, yeah, that's how Joe Biden could win, is to go old school like that. Now, I'd already been thinking about the threat of Howard Schultz running as an independent, because what he's saying is very much that sort of stuff. Like, I'm a centrist is what he's saying. I'm not ideologically leftist. I'm a centrist. And I just want what's good for the country. And I don't think that where Donald Trump is taking us is good for the country. I don't think we need a wall. I think that there's no crisis. I think we need to focus on, that's where Schultz is coming from. And I think that's going to play very, very well with the left-hand side of the silent majority. Because if you're looking at the silent majority, as Nixon described it, these are all those people really in the middle who do not live for politics. They don't watch either Fox News or CNN anymore. They're just checked out. But certainly they don't watch MSNBC. They don't watch anything that they know is ideologically tilted. They live their lives. They're good neighbors. They belong to a couple service organizations. They probably go to church, and they are just regular, solid Americans. And there's not that great big of a difference between one who is a voting Republican but a moderate, or a voting Democrat but a moderate. And really, you can't win a presidential election in this country without pulling the undecideds from the middle. And I think Howard Schultz has a great likelihood of pulling a bunch of those out. But if Biden is smart, he will listen very carefully to what Schultz is saying, and he'll listen very carefully to the sorts of things he was saying 10 years ago, before the world went crazy, and go, okay, let's reset, everybody. Let's reset to what we used to stand for. We're not socialists here. Let's reset. And take away the viability of Howard Schultz's campaign, because everybody who's lived to be 50 or 60 years old, like a lot of these silent majority people are, knows that really it's very, very unlikely, verging on impossible, for a third-party candidate to win in this country. How are they going to do it, given the Electoral College? How are they really going to do it, given the two-party system? So they would then take they would go, I like that Howard Schultz guy. Biden sure sounds a lot like Howard Schultz. Let's go with Biden. So I think there's every opportunity that if Biden does come in, that he could pose a serious challenge. And then I guess it's up in the air, and I'm really interested to hear you guys' take on this, because so many of you are pretty, really insightful people. The question then would be, what will the DNC do? Will they say, yeah, Biden's hitting on something. We need to retrench here. Crazy AOC is a nut job, and the streets of Venezuela are a horror story. And there's an example right in the current news of what happens with socialism, how it morphs from, a great, wonderful dream to a lot of spending that seems to be working, and then you run out of money, and then before you know it, it turns into an authoritarian dictatorship which happened when Hugo Chavez died, and it went over to this current president, dictator. This happens every time. It can't go any other direction. That we've seen that's the way it goes. It happened in Cuba. It happened in the Soviet Union. It happened in China. It happened everywhere it's been tried, including North Korea, where, which brings us back to Kim Jong-un. But hopefully even somebody like Kim Jong-un is understanding this better than the young, fiery ideologues of the American left, who seem to really think that they've got a standard bearer with Ocasio-Cortez. And, I have really stayed out of this because the last thing I want to do is beat up on some person that's not even 30 yet. I was inventing new ways to be stupid when I was in my 20s. And I was pretty hard left some of that time. But nobody ever listened to me. That's the key. When you're young and stupid, I don't hate anybody for that, but I wouldn't want them to be voted into some sort of powerful office, and that I certainly wouldn't expect that the mature people that are already in office in the Congress would then feel like in order to get reelected themselves, they have to go over with this young crazy. But apparently that's what's happening, with the notable exception of a few like Dianne Feinstein. I don't know if you caught that clip this past week where a bunch of the teachers had brought a bunch of kids there. God, I really hate when people use prop children. Really, really hate that. And they'd already given them all the left-wing jargon, and told them, oh, now you have to confront them and say they work for us. That being Senator Feinstein. So they go there. Feinstein they just elected her, for God's sake, by a really big plurality. She didn't almost win. She won strong. She's been in there forever, and it's not as if she is not a liberal. The thing is, she's a liberal. She's not a leftist. We're really starting to see a stark line between the liberals who we disagree with on a lot of issues, but we don't think are crazy, and these new people who we disagree with entirely and actually seem a little bit unhinged. So, of course, these kids, they had their big signs that I'm sure the teachers had put them up to, and anyway, it's a clip worth watching. But she stood her ground with them. She said, "Look, hey, well, you work for us. We voted you in." "Well, how old are you, dear?" "I'm 16. "No, technically you didn't vote for me." Let's not even talk about these 8-year-olds here barking orders at a seasoned old politico like her. So anyway, I have to think that there is, in the older ranks of, because not all the old people are the aging radicals. Many of the old people are still Democrats, but they never were radicals, and they are certainly not aging radicals now. What they are is they're sort of Carter Democrats. They're sort of their liberalism is driven mostly by a warm spirit within them, that they want to help people, and they don't spend a lot of time thinking through what it is really, what techniques should be used politically to help the most people. Anyway, that's plenty of time for me. Rambled a long time. Probably most of you aren't here, but but those of you who are, I'm going to link that video right here. I think it is. Is there anything there? Hopefully there's something there that I've put in there, and it'll link you to the video Motown versus Martin Luther King, which I think you'll enjoy. So I'm just asking because it's near dear to my heart, and I waited a long time to post it. And trust me, we're done with Black History Month after this. I'm not going to mention anything to do with black people or white people for some time. All right? So anyway, I hope everything's going good with you guys. I better tune back into the hearings and become depressed again. All right. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon. Watch for Jason's video tomorrow or the next day.